These are live pictures out in front of the Supreme Court in Washington. The story is that the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. This puts into question in many states, in at least half of the states, a woman's right to have an abortion. Her constitutional right, which has been entrenched for the past 50 years, has now been overturned by the Supreme Court. We've got lots of reaction for you. Not only did we just hear from Nancy Pelosi, oh, and I should, you know what, I'm going to welcome you as well if you are just joining us here on CBC News Network. Welcome inside our CBC newsroom. We've got you covered on this breaking news coming from the Supreme Court in the United States, overturning Roe v. Wade. There is reaction in Canada, and our Chase team has reached Kemlyn Nemard. She's the executive director of Women's Health Clinic in Winnipeg. Kemlyn, when we talked just before the shot to Nancy Pelosi and the reaction from her, you mentioned you were shocked, you were appalled. What could this mean for Canada if women in the United States cannot have access in many states to an abortion?
Well, okay, we can't know anything for sure. I'll start there. But one of the things, especially I think here in Winnipeg, I recently saw a map of the states that basically will make it a criminal offense to make it illegal to have an abortion. And they are, like Manitoba itself is kind of surrounded by those states. So we already get women coming to us from the states, like out of province, for abortions. I'm really worried that we're going to be deluged with women coming to seek those services here. And we can't, we won't turn anybody away, but we really, as a population that is 1/10 the size of the states, there's no way for us to be able to meet that demand. And really, that's not our responsibility, right? So this is one of the things that I'm very worried about. I'm also worried about all those women that don't have a choice, that won't have a choice, that cannot afford to travel, cannot afford the cost of travel, of staying in a hotel, and cannot afford the cost of paying for an abortion outside of their, here. And so and that's a lot of women. And those are the women that are going to be getting illegal abortions or going to drastic measures themselves, because they're going to be left with no choices. And I think that is something that those justices that made that decision, the Congress that, members that support those decisions, they should be carrying that reality on their consciences, because that is what's going to happen. People aren't going to stop seeking abortions. They're just going to be seeking things that are dangerous, unsafe, and putting their lives at risk.
And as women in Canada, I suppose different organizations, different groups will be certainly watching to see how those protests play out over the weekend. We may even see Canadians crossing the border to join and use their voice in, I suppose, making the dissension heard. But I want to thank you, Kemlyn, for that. You be well, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. And you as well.
Kemlyn Nemard, she's the executive director of Women's Health Clinic, Winnipeg. This is an incredible story. It is a historic decision by the Supreme Court in the United States to overturn Roe v. Wade and leave women in many states who want an abortion unable to get one. I want to now bring in Gloria Allred. She is a women's rights attorney, well known in the United States. Gloria, you've done so many big cases. We've certainly heard your story, your personal story about how this has all affected you. We talked when that leaked draft from the Supreme Court came out about a month ago. Now you know it. I mean, it's different when it's a draft that comes out and you think, oh, maybe there's a possibility. Now in your gut, you know the Supreme Court has come out with this decision. What does it mean for you?
It means that I am heartbroken for the millions of women that the Supreme Court of the United States has put their lives and their health and their safety at risk. It means that they have overruled precedent, Roe v. Wade, for 50 years. And it means that it's going to have a dire and a dangerous and a devastating impact, especially on poor women, on young women, on rural women, on women of color. What it means is that it's going to be left to each state to decide if they are going to allow abortion, legal abortion in their state. Of course, women are going to resort to illegal and unsafe abortions, as I did before 1973, before Roe v. Wade, when I had to have an abortion when it was a crime to get one for a doctor to provide it, and I had to get someone who was not a doctor or nurse to do it, who left me to hemorrhaging and in a pool of my own blood in a bathtub, didn't care what would happen, and I had to be rushed to a hospital and almost died. So this is why I personally am disgusted and shocked and angered at what the Supreme Court has done, because about half the states are going to restrict a woman and a girl's right to get a safe and legal abortion. They're going to have to try to travel to haven states like California and New York, where abortion will be legal. But this is an outrage. We are going to take to the streets. You can see that's happening already. We are going to remember in November and fight and work to elect pro-choice elected officials who will legalize abortions in the state. But it is going to be a battle. This is a war on women and girls. We must not underestimate the impact of this. Our daughters' lives are at risk, and we have to fight back.
We just heard from from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who said that a woman's right to choose reproductive freedom is on the ballot in November. Now, Gloria, for our Canadian audience, I'll just explain that your country is going through midterm elections on November 8th, I believe it is. All 435 seats in the House of Representatives are going to be up for grabs, 36 seats in the Senate. So do you see it that way, that this is going to be a ballot issue on November 8th in the United States?
100%, and I'll tell you why. Because the House of Representatives has passed what we call the Women's Health Protection Act, which would legalize abortion nationwide. But we can't get it passed in the Senate because we don't have enough United States senators who are Democrat who are going to vote for the Women's Health Protection Act and be able to break the filibuster. So what we need is a Democratic Senate, not just 50 votes, which is not enough. We need many more United States senators who are pro-choice, and we need more House of Representative members who are pro-choice. That's all we can do. And by the way, the Republicans, some of them have been advocating passing a federal law which would outlaw abortion nationwide, so that even states like California, where I am, would not be able to allow legal abortions. So this is literally a battle for our lives. When I said in my Netflix documentary, Seeing Allred, this is a war on women, about abortion, some people said, we don't understand what you're talking about. Now everyone understands what I'm talking about. It's a war on our bodies. The idea that that many women are going to be forced into mandatory motherhood because they can't get an abortion. The idea that this is an attempt to control our lives. There's a race among the states to see who can endanger the lives of women and girls the most. And they're taking pride in that they can control women. It's not going to be allowed to stand. We have to fight. We have to fight. Years ago, someone said we have to fight this plantation by plantation. That's what we have to do because we cannot allow this decision to stand.
Gloria, we know that at the end of the day, money carries a big weight in any decision, whether it's political, whether it's legal, whatever it may be. There are companies in the United States, Morgan Chase being one of them, saying they will pay for any employee to travel, if they must, out of state to have an abortion in order to protect their rights. Do you think that will make a difference to some of the scenarios you've painted of women turning to unsafe, illegal abortions because they can't, because they want to get one and will do so no matter the cost?
great point. It is important that corporate employers make sure that they assist women in being able to travel to other states where they can get an abortion. In other words, financially, make sure that they can do that. And then also have health care plans where abortion will be provided at no cost to the women and girls. But what about all of the girls and the women who live in states who are not employed outside the home, who may already have children and can't afford to take another pregnancy to term? And so they don't have a corporate employer. We need to provide funds for those women as well to be able to get to another state. The idea that you have to travel somewhere else to have control over your own body and your own future and your own life, it's an absolute outrage.
I just have one final question for you, Gloria, and I know the focus today is on abortion rights, constitutional rights for women in the U.S., but I want to ask you as well about the ripple effects of this. There have been, discussions about this leading to other rights being taken back, same-sex marriage being one of them, contraception being another.
Yes.
And while we watch in Canada and think, oh my goodness, that'll never happen, here it is. Roe v. Wade has happened 50 years later. Could those other scenarios be equally imminent and happening in your country?
It already is. There are some states that are attempting to outlaw birth control and also to stop what we call medication abortions, where a woman can take a pill essentially and self-abort. So this is, this George or the Orwellian future is here in 2022. This is a catastrophe. That word catastrophe is not even strong enough for what's happening. Yes, marriage equality is at stake. We had a Supreme Court decision on that, but this Supreme Court today shows no regard for precedent. They overruled Casey, which was a decision of the Supreme Court, which previously affirmed Roe v. Wade. So everything is at risk. Everything is at stake. We have to all make sure that we understand that we have a stake in this. And I do hope that if the women have the funds or can get the funds to go to Canada or elsewhere, that, Canada will welcome them with open arms, because we cannot allow this decision to stand.
Gloria, I know you have reached out to women to join protests, to use their voice.
Yes.
What are you going to be watching for this weekend? Because we're keeping an eye here in Canada, and perhaps Canadians crossing the border now that we can, without those required COVID tests, to join some of the women in your country in raising their voice. What are you watching for this weekend?
Well, there are protests already planned by Planned Parenthood, and everybody can go to the internet and look at the Planned Parenthood webpage, and you will see the protests which are planned, I think, in almost every state and in many cities across the country. Join in. We don't care how old you are. We don't care what country you're from. We don't care what color you are. We don't care what religion you are. We don't care what your gender is. We need you in the streets to let this country know that this is an opinion that we are going to fight to change through legislation, through throwing out the anti-choice elected officials who have been working for years to put on the Supreme Court those anti-choice justices who will overturn Roe v. Wade. They've done it today. Now, many of them are worried about their own security at their own homes because they're afraid of being attacked. What about the women's lives that are being attacked and the girls? So we're going to make our voices known in the court of public opinion and in the streets. We are going to fight back. And ultimately, but not today, we are going to win.
Always a pleasure to have you on the program. I know you're going to have a busy day ahead of you. I thank you, Gloria,
Yes.
for taking the time.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.